but can everyone hear me? Thumbs up. Yeah, okay. It's weird being back on Zoom. I was actually really looking forward to exhorting in front of everyone today. I had picture drawing and all sorts of things on butcher's paper, the old-fashioned way, but not to be. I could probably do it via Zoom with difficulty, but I can't be bothered. So the background, so my exhort is loosely around the parable of the empty house from Matthew 12. And the background to why I chose this subject today was a conversation I had a while ago with a friend of mine who is a recovering drug addict. Don't worry, he's not a Christadelphian. He was successful in kicking his initial addiction, only to end up addicted to the prescription drugs designed to help him get off the harder drugs. And in addition to that, found himself slipping back into alcoholism at the same time. You might not think this is relevant yet, but we'll get there. He was saying to me, maybe I was better off where I started with my first problem. He felt like he was out of the frying pan and into the fire, so to speak. So I told him a little bit about this parable, and he said that it made sense. And when we fleshed it out a little bit, he said it was very helpful for him. So I'll just read you what is known as the parable of the empty house by some, and that's from Matthew 12, verses 43 onwards. This is just from the ESV, if you're following along. When the unclean spirit has gone out of a person, it passes through waterless places seeking rest, but finds none. Then it says, I'll return to the house from which I came. And when it comes, it finds the house empty, swept, and put in order. It goes and brings with it 7 other spirits more evil than itself, and they enter and dwell there. And the last state of that person is worse than the first. So also it will be with this evil generation. Okay, so Jesus was speaking specifically to some of the issues of the time, but it definitely carries through for us today, and for some people more than others. So from these couple of verses recorded in Matthew and Luke, it's clear that it's clear that my exhort is the house is our lives, and the spirits are nothing more than what we fill our lives with. It's important to note that the house or our lives are never empty. What we do and what we fill our brains and our lives with, there's something all the time. We can't have it empty. So we either choose good things or we choose bad things. So what do we fill our heads with? And what do we fill our lives with? So the two extreme ends of the scale, so the very good and the very bad, I suppose the biblical examples would be Jesus in Matthew 4 being tempted in the desert. And this is the best we can get, is he was severely tempted and was quoting scripture the whole time. His brain and his life and his mind was so full of the scripture that it came out, and that's how he dealt with the problems in front of him. And I suppose on the other end of the scale is what we quite often quote to be the sin within us, was the people that were on the earth just before the flood. God saw that, this one's from the Message, hold on to your hats. God saw that human evil was out of control. People thought evil. They imagined evil. Evil, 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 from morning to night. God was sorry that he had made the human race in the first place. It broke his heart. God said, I'll get rid of my ruined creation and I'll make a clean sweep. people, animals, snakes, bugs, birds, the works. I'm sorry I made them. So the hard reality is that we probably land with a foot in both camps when we are trying to please God. The evil is within us and good is available to us. The struggle is real, so to speak. And there's often quoted scripture from Paul in Romans 7. And sorry to quote the message twice in one exhort. This will sit hard with some people, but I found it interesting. So Romans 7, what I don't understand about myself is that I decide one way, but then I act another, doing things I absolutely despise. So if I can't be trusted to figure out what is best for myself and then to do it, it becomes obvious that God's command is necessary. But I need something more. For if I know the law, but still can't keep it, and if the power of sin within me keeps sabotaging my best intentions, I obviously need help. I realize that I do not have what it takes. I can will it, but I can't do it. I decide to do good, but don't really do it. I decide not to do bad, but then I do it anyway. My decisions, such as they are, don't result in actions. Something has gone wrong deep within me, and it gets the better of me every time. I realised that one of the things that I was just about to reference from the last page of my exhort got deleted in a last attempt to, hang on, let me just, right. I'll just carry on. So I said earlier that we get to decide what we fill our lives with every morning when we get up. There's a catch to this. Our bodies are designed to make habits. Habits are what stops us from losing all our hard-earned work, from doing something good in the blink of an eye, like healthy eating habits, good habits, exercise habits, hard and diligent working habits, Bible reading habits, all these sorts of things. Experts say that it takes 3 weeks to create the beginnings of a habit and 3 months to cement it as an easy to follow path. Where I'm going with this is, just as it's true that we can make good habits, we can also make bad habits. Unfortunately, bad habits are way easier to make than good ones, as we are well aware. Something that is becoming more and more common in our current day and age is a bad habit's ugly cousin, addiction, as we've touched on earlier. Now, this isn't a particularly uplifting part of the talk that will remind us of the bread and wine just yet, but we will get there. We all have our own battles to fight. It's constantly changing for all of us. As soon as we settle one thing, the next one starts. Well, for some of us anyway, I can only speak for myself on this. These addictions rear their ugly heads in lots of different ways. As we've heard earlier, for some people, it's alcohol addiction, drug addiction. Some people have addiction to pornography or a gaming addiction. I'm shocked to see so many young people and not so young people addicted to playing video games and phone games all the time. And social skills around the community are really suffering for it. It's not something I struggle with, but I have lots of my own things that I struggle with. I suppose something that's hard is, oh, hang on, sorry, I just yeah, okay, sorry. Crazy thing is that the behavior of someone addicted to video games is actually really similar to years ago. I used to operate in a different sort of world, and I had a lot of friends who were drug addicts, and a lot of the behavior is actually quite similar, the antisocial type behavior, and it's worrying. And I suppose the hard thing is that technology and gaming and things, it's legal. It's all around us, and it's actually encouraged. And technology allows us to have meetings on Zoom, which is amazing. So it's something that we really need to, I suppose, juggle. And we'll, I suppose, see how this plays out in 5 or 10 years when the people that are in our Sunday school now will be in the position of running the ecclesia, and hopefully we'll be able to guide our young people in such a way that they'll be able to do that. I heard a really good talk. This is actually really relevant now that we're going to be stuck on Zoom for a little while. I encourage you to look up this talk. It's on the Good Christadelphian Talks podcast, and it's titled Wind by Brother Mark Carr. Has anybody heard this talk? No? All right, good. You should look it up. So I'm sort of sorry, not sorry for stealing some of his material, but it's really, it really affected me in a good way. And I'd just like to share a couple of the points that helped me get to my point. So apparently NASA did an experiment recently, I guess, where they had a bubble environment with perfect conditions for growing plants and people. I'm thinking it may have been an experiment, something around being able to live in space, I guess. Anyway, something very interesting happened. The plants were growing great and everything was flourishing until the trees grew to a certain height without an issue, but started to fall over. And it was a real head scratcher for the scientists. Just as can happen to the best of us, they forgot something. In this whole, I'm assuming, very expensive experiment, they forgot to add one of the elements, wind. And why would they? Wind is annoying and it's not needed. So they thought. There's a very special lesson that came out of this. And the trees needed wind. Even though all wind does to a tree is blow them this way and that, you would think that it doesn't help them at all. But it takes wind for the trees to learn to grow their roots deep. So they need to be blown around. Otherwise, they have a very small root ball and then they can't become a stable tree. This is Proverbs 22 verse 6 says, direct your child in the right path, and when they're older, they won't depart from it. This implies the growing of deep roots in a person. Trees being blown this way and that by windstorms, they grow deep roots. They put their energy first into developing a sufficient root system, then they can grow tall. You may be thinking that the parable of the empty house and some trees aren't particularly linked together, but I think they are. Trees growing in a windy area with a large root system are showing us how to play the long game in our life. A fully grown tree is a picture, in a way, of a wise and faithful person. The house is a more relevant picture and a reminder of how to live on a more short-term level, on a day-to-day, in a day-to-day way. What you fill your life with is important. You are the contents of your house. Another important aspect to this house is that we are the contents of God's house, the ecclesia. Think about for a moment, that we are the contents of God's house. Would a stranger, it's a little bit hard on Zoom, and this is where I was going to explain a couple of things with pictures because I didn't quite have the words, but anyway, I'll get there. Would a stranger walking into our ecclesia recognize that they have just walked into God's house? Would they see Jesus in us, in the Hunter Valley Ecclesia? I personally think that they would. Our Hunter Valley Ecclesia is one of the most welcoming communities I've ever been a part of. Even so, it's worth keeping in mind. So to your best ability, fill your life with God. Fill your mind with scripture. Fill your mind with spiritual songs. Think about caring for others. To your best ability, fill your calendar with God. Not to get to as many ecclesial events as you can. Not to get your name ticked off so that you can get kingdom points. We know that these appearances are not important to God like they can be to some people. But the reason that we get to as many things as we can is to support our other brethren and sisters and those around us in the community. Sometimes someone else turning up is enough to keep another person coming along. I've myself sometimes struggled to find the motivation to put a smile on my face and turn up to the meeting when I'm going through hard times. And a lot of the time it's either a faithful old person that I can look across at just doing what they do day in, day out, week in, week out, year in, year out, that really helps me to snap out of my selfish thinking and remember why I'm at the meeting. And just as much as that, watching the younger people than me trying their best to stick at walking God's way, walking in the truth, turning up. There's obviously a lot more to ecclesial life and our walk to the kingdom than turning up, but that's the first step. I hope the young people are listening to this. Maybe your parents make you come to everything and that just gets tiring and boring a lot of the time. But that is them helping you to grow deep roots. And this root system, once fully grown, will help you withstand the storms of life and the winds that will come. COVID's obviously one of those. And it's a thing that no one has seen before in the last, 100 years or something. No one's been through this before, and it's hard to be a young person. So anybody who is listening to this, please stick at your journey. A lot of people, younger and older, are looking at you and getting motivation, and we really appreciate your effort, especially Isaac. So as we draw closer to our focus point for this morning, remembering Jesus' life, death, and resurrection, we spoke earlier about Jesus being so full of scripture that he was able to go a long time without food and being tempted, and the scriptures fed him. It obviously, we do need real food too, but spiritual food is what Jesus fed on, and it's how he survived through this. And I'll read through this, just 11 verses from Matthew 4. And I'm actually going to finish shortly after this, so I encourage you to follow along. Then Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. And after fasting for 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. And the tempter came and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread." But he answered, "It is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but every word that comes from the mouth of God." Then the devil took him to the holy city and set him on the pinnacle of the temple and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and on their hands they will bear you up, lest you strike your foot against a stone." And Jesus said to him again, "It is written, you shall not put the Lord your God to the test." And again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. And he said to him, "All these I will give you, if you will fall down and worship me." Then Jesus said to him, "Be gone, Satan, for it is written, you shall worship the Lord your God, and him only you shall serve." Then the devil left him, and behold, the angels came and were ministering to him. And we know that there is no supernatural devil. We're well aware of that. But the sin within us can be very tempting to us at times, and it can encourage us to be lazy and selfish. And this is what we fight against all the time. And especially in a day and age at the moment, that it is very tempting to click a button and turn off to the ecclesia. There's people that are isolated all over the world, and it does really tempt our faith. And this example of Jesus filling his life so full to the brim with God that he was able to withstand these temptations is something that, when I think back about the parable of the house or the empty house, if we try to push bad habits or addictions or bad behaviors out of our life, we need to make sure that, just like Jesus, we fill it straight back up with God. Don't leave it empty, or there will be worse things come in and dwell in our house, which is our life. And to finish, we also must watch out for each other in these difficult times. When we see dangerous behaviours developing in each other, young or old, please speak up on a personal level to those around us in our ecclesia. Help them to get through the hard times, because we need to stick together to make sure that we can help each other on the path to the kingdom. Thank you.